Hey, Peter. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna have to take the globe down and do a little questioning.
Yeah, sorry, that's the best Joe Swanson I got. Anyway, now that we know gravity is pretty much non existent in the way we think of it, and the Earth is not a globe, we have to start and think, well, if it's not a ball, what is it? And I personally don't think there's an edge we can fall off of, nor are we under a literal solid dome. I don't think that. I'm also not saying that the Earth is paper thin at all. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a plane, as in it's not. There's no curve to it. You could, if we could possibly do this, we could graph it on grid paper with straight lines and show the Earth how it really is. If we could see the whole Earth, but we can't, obviously. And I'm not saying that space doesn't exist. It's just not anything close to what we think it is, nor has any man ever been there, nor can any human being in a physical body ever go there. It's just not possible. The what I would describe as the dome, not necessarily a solid dome, enclosing the Earth is what scientists call the Van Allen radiation belts. These radiation belts are around the Earth completely covering the Earth. And today they say they cannot get through the Van Allen radiation belts to, further go into space and do more projects. Well, guess what? The moon is past the Van Allen radiation belts. So at this point, we gotta ask, has space technology somehow gone backwards since we went to the moon? Have they forgotten how to get past the Van Allen radiation belts like they did the first time? Or are they just making up bullcrap so they don't have to keep spending money to fake stuff, and it's a great excuse to not have to go to Mars at the moment, not to have to revisit the moon or do any real science or exploration, really. We're just making assumptions and guesses and making pictures to go with that and showing it to the world.
Hey, Vsauce, Michael here. This point of light in the sky is Earth, as seen from the surface of Mars. Earth as seen from Saturn, only 45,000 kilometers away, the famous blue marble.
But what does Earth really look like?
Well, it depends on how you define look. If the entire practical spectrum of wavelengths was laid out linearly from New York to Los Angeles, the visual portion we see would only be the size of 100 nanometers, small enough to slip through a surgical mask. What's with the tyranny of north meaning up? Perhaps it's because we often equate up with better. It didn't originally look like this. The crew of Apollo 17 originally took it like this. NASA rotated it to fit our traditional idea of up after the fact. Here's a visual of Earth that comes from the US Naval Observatory's live animation of our planet. You can see exactly what parts are in its shadow at this very moment. Other shadows fall on Earth as well, like the moon's shadow. A flat map of the Earth is really convenient, but it requires projecting a globe onto something flat. And a sphere's surface cannot be represented on a plane without distortion. Pick on the Mercator project, and is even used by Google Maps. It preserves shape decently well, but suffers when it comes to area. Africa is huge. Its area is so large, the entire contiguous United States could fit inside of it, along with all of China, India, Japan, and much of Europe.
The entire contiguous United States could fit inside of it, along with all of China, India, Japan, and much of Europe.
But on the Mercator projection, scale near the poles is pretty wonky, distorted. You can see how the math behind map projections distort Earth by interacting with them on Jason Davies' brilliant site. Notice how small Greenland appears on the Mercator projection when pulled down to the equator, and how exaggerated it becomes when moved to the edge. Try the Gall Peters. Here, land masses are the right relative. Enter the Mulvide. This projection shows equal areas and is a bit more pleasant shape-wise. If you interrupt the Mulvide around the oceans, relative area is preserved and the shape of land masses becomes even more accurate. Or a beautiful butterfly map that can be a ball until it's flattened, say under a pane of glass. The Dymaxion map can unfold to show how nearly connected Earth's land masses are. It's a great way to visualize human migration, but it remains a bit of a disappointment to realize just how narrow our slice of visual perception really is.
Especially when your perception comes from people like Sir Isaac Newton. But thanks to Michael from Vsauce for showing us just how inaccurate our maps are. It was a great help. So it seems like the maps based on around Earth have been getting people, from place to place for a while now. If the Earth is really flat, then the maps based on around Earth wouldn't work, right? Right? Well, that's not right. Most navigators use the Robinson or Mercator projections, neither of which has anything to do with actually representing the Earth's real shape. So let's take a look at this map and model right here. Like the maps Michael from Vsauce just showed, this map has some flaws. Some pretty big ones, I'll admit. But it is a great example to show how things can work on a flat Earth, and how we're not limited to only existing on a globe or even having to be just one in a system of planets going around the sun. We don't have to have that situation existing for us to exist. And one of the first arguments someone will probably bring up about this model is that they think a lunar eclipse can only happen if the Earth is a globe and the Earth is casting its shadow onto the moon when it's perfectly lined up between the sun and the moon. And that's not necessarily the case. When you look at this model and you see how everything in the sky orbits the Earth, and they're definitely not to scale in this orbit going around the Earth. This is just a pretty simple example. But how many times have you looked at your shadow and noticed that it's twice as long as you are, just much larger than you are? Now, after thinking about the model we just looked at, anything could be passing between the sun and the moon above the Earth and making that eclipse. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Earth between the sun and the moon. Another detail that's too big not to talk about is when an eclipse starts and the sun is going down, the shadow somehow starts at the top of the moon. That doesn't make sense by the path of the sun and where the Earth is placed. This is about how it should look if we're really on a globe going around the sun and lunar eclipses are caused by the Earth's shadow. So, it's undeniable that things don't add up, things don't make sense, and quite frankly are lies in what we're told from science. Here's a random official ISS picture. Notice how the Earth has a different curve to it than the last ISS picture I showed you, and also that the sun is about half the size that they showed in the last picture. Do you still believe? Do you still believe that we're on a floating ball? At all altitudes, unless you shoot through a fisheye lens, the horizon will be flat. It's going to be flat. It's going to come to eye level every single time. 20 miles high on a weather balloon, flat horizon above the clouds. From Mount Everest, flat horizon. A flat stretch of the ocean. There it is, flat. Although the camera's tilted in this picture, you'll notice that the horizon's still flat. The Suez Canal connecting the Mediterranean with the Red Sea is 100 miles long, without any locks, making the water an uninterrupted continuation of the two seas. When constructed, the Earth's supposed curvature was not taken into account. It was dug along a horizontal datum line 26 feet below sea level, passing through several lakes from one sea to the other, with the datum line and water's surface running perfectly parallel over the 100 miles. And if you're still questioning even the idea of this flat Earth model, just notice how time zones work just as well on this model as they do on the supposed globe we live on. So really just think about what you think you know is evidence that we're on a globe, and then realize that there is no evidence we're on a globe. Before all the assumptions and theories of science, the people of the world knew the Earth was flat.
She packed my bags last night, pre-flight.
Cut the music! I don't think you have enough evidence yet. Ship captains, in navigating great distances at sea, never need to factor the supposed curvature of the Earth into their calculations. Both plain sailing and great circle sailing, the most popular methods of navigation, use plain, not spherical, trigonometry, making all mathematical calculations on the assumption that the Earth is perfectly flat. If the Earth were in fact a sphere, such an errant assumption would lead to constant, glaring inaccuracies. Plain sailing has worked perfectly fine in both theory and practice for thousands of years. However, in plane trigonometry is time and time again proven more accurate than spherical trigonometry in determining distances across the oceans. Still need more? The Michelson-Morley and Sagnac experiments attempted to measure the change in speed of light due to Earth's assumed motion through space. After measuring in every possible different direction in various locations, they failed to detect any significant change whatsoever. Once again proving our geocentric model. In the Ball Earth model, Antarctica is the ice continent which covers the bottom of the ball from 78 degrees south latitude to 90 degrees, and therefore is not more than 12,000 miles in circumference. Many early explorers, including Captain Cook and James Clark Ross, however, in attempting Antarctic circumnavigation took 3 to 4 years and clocked 50 to 60,000 miles around. The British ship Challenger also made an indirect but complete circumnavigation of Antarctica, traversing 69,000 miles. This is entirely inconsistent with the Ball model. Alright, here's the last thing I'll bring up. The establishment claims the midnight sun is experienced in Antarctica, but they conveniently do not have any uncut videos showing this. Nor do they allow independent explorers to travel to Antarctica during the winter solstice to verify or refute these claims. Conversely, there are dozens of uncut videos publicly available showing the Arctic midnight sun, and it has been verified beyond any shadow of a doubt. So, just think about that for a while.
Sitting in the morning sun,